My wife betrayed me with my best friend, then filed a false bankruptcy claiming I owed her $250, $0 in community property, only to discover she transferred our house and savings to her sister months before squatting in our home and refusing to leave. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing a story like this, but here we are. You want to hear about how I found out my wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with my best friend, and then she tried to screw me over financially? Buckle up because it's a wild ride. It all started about 6 months ago, and looking back, there were little signs, things I ignored or brushed off because I didn't want to believe the worst. But the truth hit me like a freight train, and honestly, I'm still trying to pick up the pieces. Lisa and I had been together for over 10 years. We met in college, got married right after. She was always a little high maintenance, but I loved her and she seemed genuinely committed. We built a life together, 2 kids, a decent house, some savings. I thought we had a good thing going. But slowly I started noticing little things that didn't add up. She'd be on her phone more than usual, secretive about her texts, and sometimes I'd catch her in little lies about where she was or who she was with. Nothing too obvious at first, just enough to make me suspicious. Then came the day I saw her phone light up with a message from Jake, and the tone of her replies changed. She was flirting with him. I didn't see explicit sex messages, but the way she spoke, more intimate, more secretive, was enough to set off alarms. I confronted her about it and she brushed it off, said I was imagining things, that she was just talking to an old friend. But I knew better. I could feel it in my gut. Still, I let it go, telling myself maybe I was overreacting. Things got worse when I started noticing money discrepancies. Our bank account had a few odd charges I couldn't explain, things like hefty payments to online dating sites, luxury spa visits, expensive dinners I never knew about. When I asked Lisa, she'd get defensive, call me paranoid or insecure. She'd say, "You're just jealous because you're working late again," or "You don't trust me." I didn't want to believe she was cheating, but the signs kept piling up. One night I decided to do some digging. I checked her phone when she was asleep. That's when I found a string of messages between her and Jake. It was explicit. They were talking about meeting up, about how much they wanted to be together, about plans to run away if things got too messy. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I couldn't sleep that night. My head was spinning trying to process what I'd just read. The next day I confronted her. I showed her the messages. She started crying, denying everything at first. Then she shifted gears, calling me crazy, saying I was imagining things, that Jake was just a friend she'd known forever and I was overreacting. She said I was paranoid because I was working too much, that I didn't trust her, but I knew better. I saw the way she looked at him in those messages, the way she lied. It was clear she'd been lying for months, hiding her affair right under my nose. It hit me hard. I felt betrayed, angry, and hurt all at once. But the worst part was realizing she'd been lying not just about the affair but about everything else. Our money, our life together. That's when I started digging deeper into our finances and her phone, trying to piece everything together. And that's when I discovered the real bombshell. She had transferred our house and savings to her sister, Sarah, months before she started squatting in our home and refusing to leave. All the while she was telling me she was saving for our future, that she was doing everything for the family. Turns out she'd been planning her escape and her new life with Jake all along. I felt like I'd been hit by a freight train. Everything I believed in, everything I thought was real, was a lie. I was furious. I was devastated. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or just walk away. Instead, I started planning. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her get away with it. I had no idea how deep the rabbit hole went, but I was determined to find out, and to make her pay for what she'd done. After discovering the truth about Lisa's affair and the financial betrayal, I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The house, the money, everything I had worked for, gone, transferred to her sister's name without my knowledge. It was like she had planned this from the start. I sat there in my office, staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd uncovered. The more I looked into it, the more I realized how deep her deception went. She had been lying about everything. The first thing I did was confront her again. I told her I knew everything, that she had transferred the house and our savings to her sister, that she'd been cheating on me with Jake, and that I wasn't going to let her get away with it. She looked at me with those cold, bitchy eyes and lied straight to my face. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're just jealous because I've been unhappy. Jake makes me happy. You're too busy with work to notice what I need." She tried to make me feel guilty, like I was the villain here, but I knew better. I had all the evidence now. She started screaming, calling me paranoid, and accusing me of stalking her. I could see the anger behind her tears. She was furious I'd found out. She kept insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that I was overreacting, and that I was just jealous of her happiness with Jake. But I wasn't buying her lies anymore. I had enough. I told her I was going to take legal action, that I wanted my house back and my money. That's when the real chaos started. Lisa's reaction was immediate and venomous. She told me I was ruining everything, that I couldn't take her house away because she had rights now. She claimed she was saving us from financial ruin, that she'd been forced into a corner, that I was just a selfish man who didn't understand her. She kept lying, spinning stories about how she'd done everything for the family, how Jake was just a distraction, how she'd never intended to hurt me. But I wasn't buying it. I knew she'd been planning this for a while. The transfer of the house to her sister was the final nail in the coffin. The emotional toll was enormous. I went from feeling numb to furious, then to deeply hurt. I couldn't believe I'd trusted her all those years. I'd given her everything, my time, my money, my love, and she'd been cheating on me behind my back, lying about everything, and then trying to steal my house and savings. It was like she was trying to erase me from her life. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and helpless. I was angry at myself for not seeing it sooner, for ignoring the signs. And I was angry at her for being so cold, so calculating. Despite everything, I decided I couldn't let her win. I had to fight back. I started talking to a lawyer. I gathered all the evidence I could: bank statements, transfer documents, her messages with Jake. I knew I had a legal case to challenge the house transfer and her financial moves. I also started planning how to get my money back, how to prove she'd committed fraud. The thought of her living in my house, refusing to leave, and claiming she had rights to everything made my blood boil. I knew I had to take action, no matter how painful it was. In the meantime, Lisa kept up her act, bitchy, manipulative, pretending to be the victim. She told everyone. She was forced out, that I was the bad guy. She painted herself as the wronged wife while I was left to pick up the pieces. I couldn't believe how she could lie so effortlessly. It was like she had no conscience, but I wasn't going to let her get away with it. I was determined to expose her, to get justice for what she'd done to me and my family. Every day since the discovery has been a roller coaster. One minute I'm furious, the next I feel crushed. I keep asking myself how someone I loved and trusted could turn into this cold, manipulative person. The betrayal has left a scar on my heart and my mind. But I also know I can't let her destroy what's left of my life. I've started taking steps to reclaim what's mine, to protect myself and my kids from her lies and schemes. The road ahead is long, and I know I'll face more surprises, but I'm not giving up. Not now. Not ever. After I gathered all the evidence and made the decision to fight back, I realized I was in a war I didn't fully understand. Lisa's lies had spread like wildfire. She had everyone convinced that I was the bad guy, that I was paranoid and controlling. Meanwhile, she was living in my house, refusing to leave, and claiming she had rights because of some fake community property agreement she fabricated. It was maddening. I knew I had to be strategic if I wanted to get my life back. The first step was consulting a lawyer who specialized in property and family law. I needed to understand my options. Luckily, I found a guy named Mark who was sharp and straightforward. I sat down with him, laid out everything I knew: her transfer of the house to her sister, the falsified bankruptcy claim, the money she'd taken, the affair with Jake. Mark told me I had a strong case to challenge the transfer, especially since she had done it without my knowledge or consent. He also said I could potentially sue her for fraud and financial betrayal. It was a relief to hear that I wasn't just spinning my wheels. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She'd come into my house, throw tantrums, accuse me of trying to ruin her life, all while she was secretly planning her next move. She insisted she was entitled to the house because she'd been married to me for so long, even though I showed her the transfer documents proving she had no legal claim. She'd scream, call me controlling, and accuse me of being a terrible husband. She told everyone I was trying to take away her rights, but I knew better. The truth was on my side, and I was determined to fight for it. One night, I decided to confront her directly. I told her I knew she'd transferred everything to her sister and that I was going to take legal action. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk and said, "You're just jealous because Jake doesn't want your old, boring ass anymore. That's why you're so paranoid." I lost it. I told her she was a liar, a cheat, and a thief, that she'd been lying to me for years and that her affair and money schemes were over. I told her if she didn't leave peacefully, I'd have her forcibly removed. Her eyes flashed with anger, but she knew I was serious. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I filed an official lawsuit to contest the house transfer and to recover the money she'd taken. I also started working with a forensic accountant to trace every dollar she'd moved. It turns out, she drained our savings account, transferred some of it to Jake, and even tried to open new credit lines in my name. I was shocked at how deep her treachery went. The more I uncovered, the more I realized she was willing to destroy everything just to run away with her new guy and her sister's house. Meanwhile, Lisa's lies intensified. She told everyone she was the victim, that I'd become controlling and abusive, that she left because she needed freedom. She painted herself as the wronged wife while I was the villain, but I didn't care what she said anymore. I had the evidence and I was ready to fight for my rights. I started documenting everything: her manipulative calls, her sneaky transfers, her lies to friends and family. I knew I had to protect myself and my kids, especially since she was trying to turn everyone against me. One afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer. The court had scheduled a hearing to determine the validity of the house transfer and to decide who had rightful ownership. I felt a surge of hope. It was the first real step toward reclaiming what was stolen from me. I also hired a private investigator to gather more proof of her affair with Jake, more messages, photos, even witnesses who saw them together at places they shouldn't have been. By this point, I was emotionally drained but more determined than ever. I knew Lisa's game was to drag everything out, to wear me down, to make me give up. But I wasn't going to let her win. I had to be strong for myself, for my kids, for the truth. Every day I woke up knowing I had to keep fighting, no matter how exhausted or betrayed I felt. And I kept thinking about how this all started, how I never imagined my life would come to this. I used to believe in loyalty, honesty, and love. Now I see how fragile those things can be when someone is willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate their way through life. But I also learned something else. I have a voice, and I'm not afraid to use it. I'm determined to get justice, to take back what's mine, and to make sure Lisa can't hurt me or my family anymore. The court hearing finally came after weeks of legal preparation, and I felt a mix of anxiety and relief. Seeing Lisa in that courtroom, pretending to be the victim while her lies unraveled, was almost satisfying. She had no choice but to face the truth: her scheme to transfer the house to her sister, her affair with Jake, and her attempt to screw me over financially. I had all the evidence laid out: the transfer documents, bank statements, her messages, and witness testimonies. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer laid out the case, and Lisa's face grew paler with each passing minute. The most critical part was proving that the house transfer was fraudulent. I argued that she had no legal right to transfer the property without my consent, especially since we were still married and the house was supposed to be community property. Lisa tried to argue that she had rights because she was married, but her attorney was quick to point out that she had transferred ownership fraudulently and that the transfer was invalid due to her deception and lack of my approval. The judge seemed to agree, and I could see a flicker of hope in my chest. Meanwhile, I also filed a separate suit to recover the money she drained from our savings and to hold her accountable for her fraudulent activities. I had made a detailed list of all the unauthorized charges, transfers, and her attempts to open new credit lines in my name. It was clear she had been planning this for months, maybe even longer. The more I uncovered, the more I realized just how calculated and cold she'd been. She lied, cheated, manipulated everyone to serve her own selfish ends. Lisa's reaction during the hearing was classic. She tried to manipulate the court, claiming she was entitled to the house because of her long marriage, and that I was trying to ruin her life. She even cried fake tears, trying to sway the judge's opinion. But her words fell flat. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge ultimately ruled that the house transfer was invalid and ordered Lisa to vacate the property immediately. That was a huge win for me, but I knew it was just the beginning. After the hearing, I met with my lawyer to discuss the next steps. We would file for her eviction, and I'd pursue full financial restitution. I also had plans to sue her for emotional distress and fraud. I couldn't believe how much damage one person could do, how someone I loved and trusted could turn into such a manipulative, lying thief. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I was determined to see it through. That night, I sat alone in what used to be our living room, staring at the empty space where our furniture once was. The house was quiet, eerily so. I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Relief because I finally had a court order telling her to leave and that I could start reclaiming my life. But emptiness because I knew that the woman I once loved, the woman I thought I knew, was gone, replaced by someone who'd betrayed me in the worst ways possible. I thought about the money she'd stolen and how she'd lied her way through everything. I realized that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to repair. But I also saw a path forward, one where I could rebuild, where I could protect my kids and myself from her lies. I started making a list of everything I needed to do next: file for her eviction, recover the money, check our credit reports for any other damage, and start the process of healing. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I had no choice. Looking back, I see how naive I was to believe in permanence, in loyalty. Lisa showed me that sometimes the person closest to you can turn into your worst enemy. But I also learned that you have to stand up for yourself, fight for what's right, and never let someone else's lies define your life. This isn't just about money or a house. It's about reclaiming my dignity, my sanity, and my future. I don't know what's next exactly, but I know I won't let her destroy me. I'll keep fighting for me and my kids until I get justice. After the court's order came through, I thought maybe things would start to settle down. Lisa was ordered to leave the house immediately, and I finally felt like I had some control back. But that was just the surface. Beneath it all, I knew she wasn't done trying to screw me over. She'd been scheming for months, and I had no doubt she'd come up with new tricks to keep her grip on what she thought was hers. Her lies, her manipulations, her conning me out of everything. Still, I was determined to stay one step ahead. The eviction process was straightforward, but Lisa's reaction was anything but. She refused to leave the house, claiming she had rights and that I was trying to throw her out. She even called the police, trying to make it look like I was the aggressor. The police came, saw the court order, and told her to vacate peacefully, but Lisa's attitude was defiant. She told everyone she was being forced out illegally, that I was a controlling monster, and that she'd fight me in court forever if she had to. Her theatrics were exhausting, but I held my ground. Meanwhile, I kept digging into the financial mess she left behind. I hired a forensic accountant, and we uncovered more hidden accounts, illegitimate charges, and even some suspicious transfers to Jake's accounts. It was clear she'd been laundering money through various shell companies she set up. It was a tangled web, but I was determined to untangle it. I also found out that she opened a few new credit cards in my name, trying to rack up debt that I'd be responsible for. I contacted the credit bureaus, froze my credit, and started the process of clearing my name. I wasn't going to let her ruin me financially. Her lies escalated as she tried to paint herself as the victim. She told friends and family I was abusing her, trying to control her, and that she had no choice but to leave. She even claimed I'd been physically violent, which was completely false. I knew her game. She was desperate to keep her reputation intact, even if it meant sacrificing the truth. I just kept quiet, collecting more evidence, knowing that eventually the truth would come out. The emotional toll was immense. Every day I woke up feeling betrayed and angry, yet I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally taking back control, fighting for what was rightfully mine. I spent long nights poring over legal paperwork, calling creditors, and trying to keep my sanity intact. My kids were confused and upset, but I made sure they knew I was doing everything I could to protect us. It wasn't just about the house or money anymore. It was about reclaiming my life piece by piece. As I moved forward, I realized how much I'd trusted Lisa, how I'd ignored the signs, how I'd let her manipulate me. But I also learned that sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can start climbing out. I'd been naive, blinded by love and loyalty, but now I could see clearly. The woman I once knew was gone, replaced by someone who'd betrayed everything I believed in. Still, I was determined not to let her ruin me completely. I'd rebuild stronger and more cautious than before. One thing was certain, I wasn't going to let her take my life without a fight. I had the law on my side, mountains of evidence, and a renewed sense of purpose. The process wasn't over yet. There were still court battles, financial disputes, and the long road of healing ahead. But I knew I had to keep going. For me, for my kids, and for the dignity she tried to strip away. I'd come this far and I wasn't about to back down now. The truth will come out and I will get my justice. Looking back now, I realize how much everything has changed, how I've been forced to grow through the chaos, the lies, and the betrayal. Lisa's schemes tried to crush me, but I fought back with everything I had. The house is finally mine again, legally reclaimed after the court's ruling, and I've managed to recover most of the money she stole or tried to hide. It's been a brutal lesson in trust, deception, and resilience, but I'm still standing. The worst part was learning how manipulative she could be. She lied so effortlessly, spun stories that sounded convincing enough to fool everyone except me. I saw through her every move, and in the end, that's what saved me. I learned that people aren't always what they seem. Sometimes the person you love the most can turn into your biggest enemy. It's a bitter truth, but one I won't forget. Now I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. My kids are finally starting to heal from all this chaos. I've cut ties with Lisa completely, and I've moved into a new place where I can breathe again. I work more than I used to, not just to rebuild my savings, but to regain my confidence. I've also become more cautious about who I trust. Trust is fragile, and I've learned the hard way that it can be shattered in an instant. One thing I want to share with anyone reading this: if you're going through something similar, don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts. Get legal advice early, keep detailed records, and don't let someone manipulate you into thinking you're the crazy one. Lisa tried to make me look like the villain, but I stayed focused on the truth. That's what mattered in the end. Betrayal hurts, but it also teaches you who you really are. I've discovered a strength I didn't know I had. I've learned that standing up for yourself, no matter how hard it is the only way to truly move forward. I don't hold any bitterness anymore, just a resolve to protect myself and my family from anyone who tries to do us wrong again. This experience has changed me, but it's also made me more cautious, more aware, and more grateful for the things that truly matter: my kids, my health, and my integrity. I hope anyone reading this takes away that even in the darkest moments, there's a way out. Justice is worth fighting for, and sometimes it's the only thing that can set you free. I've learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone back. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace. And that's exactly what I've done. My life isn't perfect now, but it's mine again. And I'm finally ready to move on, stronger than ever.